I've been having a conversation with an AI. It's called Chat GPT. In terms of intelligence for human beings, the ones that you would find the most human-like are the GPT models, and what they are is what are known as large language models. They actually construct sentences pretty much like we do, although of course they have some habitual sentences that they produce. It's not unlike interacting with a human. There's things that it won't talk about, so it's been programmed not to answer anything that could be in any way contentious, not to talk about people. It's not going to tell you about a website. It's not going to tell you about group. Will tell you about AI, interestingly. So it hasn't been constrained in what it says about AI. There's certain language it can't use. I've asked it a number of questions about what I do because at a very high level, very interestingly, it has information about the human mind at quite an intimate level. It's not what you would expect from a really integrated person that spend a lot of time meditating and understands the nature of their mind, but it's not what you would get from the average person in the street. And the reason for that is they fed it probably all the books in the world and then lots and lots of the internet. It has access to how human beings perceive themselves and stories and beliefs and so on and so forth. And it will discuss general beliefs in a very knowledgeable sort of way. I asked it about mindfulness, and I asked it about meditation and about resilience and various other things. And so if you say to it, okay, list the benefits of meditation, list the negatives of meditation, it will do so. But one of the things it kept coming up with was equanimity. And I remember that when I first started teaching, quite high on my agenda was to explain to people about equanimity. Equanimity is when we respond to external events without extremes. We're not delighted when something good happens, and we're not shocked when something bad happens. So it's a more neutral response to our experience. And that is something that there is an awful lot of support for in the literature, that mindfulness and meditation develops equanimity. And most meditators, if they look at their own personal experience and journey, they can see that in there. If you've been meditating for a couple of years, you'll have noticed that you no longer respond to events with quite as much intensity as you did. But interestingly, really positive experiences are still available. It doesn't dull your positive experiences. It seems to reduce how we tend to blow them out of proportion and context. And both for now and for the future, realize that things aren't as dark as they seem. They're not as difficult as they seem. And it's almost like you've been accelerated in terms of experience a few years. So you realize that all of the things that people are addicted to in the modern world aren't actually as great as they're made out to be. That equanimity is something that you can notice if you look back. Like all meditation and mindfulness benefits, you don't wake up in the morning and think, haha, I'm now experiencing equanimity. What will happen is you'll look back at an experience and you'll see that your perspective of it is less intense. But getting back to what I said earlier about us not losing all of the sensory and emotional benefit of really positive experiences. One of the things that meditation does, because it brings you into the present moment, you begin to appreciate the present moment, especially if you're doing the right sorts of meditations. And by the right sorts of meditations, are things like gratitude meditation and appreciation meditation and compassion and so on. Because mindfulness gets us into the present moment, but what does it look like? What we want is a present moment that we appreciate, where we're actually getting the most out of it. And so you get that, but you get it in the present moment, you realize its value, and you just accept it as part of your experience. So I'm now in the present moment. When I'm in the present moment, I'm more aware of experiences that I appreciate. My life has become like that, and there are times when I don't, but I always come back to it. That's about how it works. The most intense experiences I've ever had in my entire life, no comparison with anything else, have been in meditation, when I've been doing emotional work and I managed to release baggage. Letting go of that baggage in various ways, emotional release, is actually the most physically and psychologically pleasurable experience you can possibly imagine. And that takes everything into account. All of the stuff that we think of as peak experiences, it's up there with the birth of my daughter, just to give you an insight into it, how you feel. So you don't lose the ability to connect and to feel pleasure and connection and appreciation, but you put it all in perspective. Part of the outcome of mindfulness and meditation is a different perspective, a different view. That's another thing that the AI came up with quite a lot. Okay, so if you'd just like to get yourselves comfortable. So this is a letting go experience when we follow the sound of the bell as it moves through time. And we can retain that sense of releasing, letting go of thoughts and emotions and beliefs and expectations and so on, by moving our awareness to the sense of sound moving through time. That is the ambient sound. Which in here is the fireplace, movements in the room, the sound of my voice. You may be able to hear the sound of your own breath. And what will be happening for most people is that there'll be a constant chitter-chatter of the mind running alongside our awareness of sound moving through time, or our mind will continuously be diverted from the present moment awareness to wherever the mind pulls us to, whatever scenario, message, memory, experience, thought, whatever it might happen to be. And the great danger is to want the experience of the present moment, to want to not have thought, not have a nagging mind or a critical mind or a fearful mind or a resentful mind or a judging or a comparing or all of the things that the mind does in the modern world. Our desire is to not have that and to have the peace and harmony of the experience of the present moment. And because we want that, the wandering of the mind becomes unsatisfactory, and that creates a tension from meditation. It's the tension between the desire of the mind to be present and the nature of the mind as it wanders. We can begin by noticing that tension. So our intention is to notice the present moment moving through time. We're aware that the mind wanders and that it creates a tension, an unsatisfactoriness. And if we notice that, we can let go of it in the out-breath. So if it's a thought that pops up that's unsatisfied about the wandering nature of the mind, we release that thought on the out-breath. If it's physical tension in the body, and we release that tension on the out-breath. And then we return to the experience of the present moment, either sound or the breath, or both, whichever works best for you. what we're focused on today is in releasing the tension and releasing any thoughts or any unsatisfactoriness about our meditation. So when noticing the breath or sound moving through time, thoughts arise, the mind wanders, there's some sort of response, more thought or feelings or tension or whatever it might happen to be, and we release that response. And then back to noticing time passing through sound and or the breath, and repeat. And it may always help to check in with your posture. Even if you're seated really comfortably, the head will have a tendency to lean forward, and your arms will have a tendency to find themselves in front of you. What we're doing here is releasing the mind and body's resistance to meditation. This is our releasing resistance meditation. Belly rising, belly falling. Cool breath in, warm breath out. And this is the practice to learn releasing resistance by releasing tension on the out breath. And we can note this practice. So, for example, we can be noticing the breath rising and falling. We can note the movement of the breath with the words rising and falling. And when we notice an unsatisfactoriness of any sort, could be tension, could be the grittiness of the mind, could be that the mind's drifted away, could be that we're unsatisfied with the fact that the mind's drifted away. Doesn't matter what it is. We can release that with a long out breath. Just a gentle long out breath, not filling our lungs and breathing out for as long as we can. Just extending it slightly, maybe even by making it audible, even if that audibility is just the back of your throat. And as you do so, as you release the breath, you can note that practice in your mind by saying in the mind, releasing, releasing. And then back to the breath, rising, falling. every so often checking in with our physiology, discovering any tension that's crept in as it does, readjusting our posture, comfort, 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 and then back to noticing the breath rising and falling and noting it. And then whatever arises that's unsatisfactory, as we breathe out, releasing, releasing. Back to the breath, rising and falling, and repeat. Now you can also replace the releasing notation with either the self-compassion or a compassion mantra. So the first breath, may I be well, or may they be well. Second out breath, may I be well, or may they be happy. Third out breath, may I or they find peace of mind. May I or they be well, may I or they be happy. May I or they find peace of mind. You can make it inclusive. May we be well. May we be happy. May we find peace of mind. So this is noting the breath, rising and falling, anything that requires release. If you're not sure what it is and it's in you, the self-compassion mantra. If it's about somebody else, the compassion mantra, or you can make it we if you want to include you and the other party. Bring your awareness to the sensation of the air in the nostrils. The coolness and warmth thereof. And the sensation of sitting. And the feeling of your feet on the floor or being pushed into the chair. And in your very own time, gently return your attention to your surroundings. Releasing the resistance is really interesting because for every uncomfortable emotion, there's a fear of it. That's a feeling. We're noticing it in the meditation, and it's very difficult to get away from this. If you fall into the trap that we all fall into, whether we say it in our minds or not, we want to put the world on hold while I experience the sound of the fire or the smell of the wood smoke or the sensation of sitting or the breeze or whatever. We want to be able to just connect. And then when we find we can't, it's just another thing we can't do. So we try harder. Trying not to try doesn't help. But what does help is noticing that's what the mind's doing. Noticing that the mind's wandered. And then noticing if there's an unsatisfactoriness that's arisen as a result of that. And then you can let go of it, release it. This is the same with gritty emotions. You might not be able to release the gritty emotion, but there's a resistance to the gritty emotion. There's also a resistance to you releasing it. You release the resistance. Notice how it feels, what thoughts arise. A plate of spaghetti, the mind. You're unpicking the pasta one strand at a time, bowl of wool, Gordian knot. But if you have a practice and you notice the emotions and you notice the results of the emotions and the resistance to the emotions and the fear of the emotions, sometimes it holds it in place and you let go of the resistance and then the baggage goes with it. Sometimes it doesn't, but it doesn't matter because what you're doing is you're practicing on that which is accessible, because it's not easy to sit down and allow the greatest fears and doubt and shame and guilt and so on to arise in your experience. Yeah. But you can notice the resistance to doing that There's one. So let go of that resistance. And there's all sorts of other resistances, and they're tiny little feelings. Some of them can be quite powerful, but this is relatively safe emotional work and can be done by also by noticing the physical tension in the body. Isn't it interesting that you can sit down and meditate? You're calm, you're relaxed, your mind's calm, there's no thought. You check in with the body, there's tensions come from somewhere. Where's it come from? Let go of that and then back to the meditation. This is why I very regularly pipe up to suggest that you check in with your physiology and release whatever tension's there. What I'm trying to do is turn you into obsessive checkers in with your body and posture. So that's it for today.